in World War One. So John French described how troops used volleys of abuse across no man's land without even leaving their trenches. But he said the exchange were in good humour and came during unofficial mini ceasefires at the front line. While Tommies yelled, "Come on, Fritz," in harsh mocking German tones, so "Come on, Fritzen," their enemies would use their fake out English accents as well to reply with, "No blooming fair." So they will both use banter across no man's land to basically taunt, but in a meaningful, good-hearted, light-hearted way. Well, this was at the earlier stages of the war, 1914-1915. But sapper Sir John French survived the war actually, but he died in 1937 in 1929 to tuberculosis, leaving 2 volumes of his diaries to his sister Emily. And of course, upon World War One centennials, they have actually resurfaced, and he's actually become more of a hero-ish kind of thing, become a banter man of sorts. So in his diary, he writes, "Saw a ridiculous thing in the trenches this morning. Heard some shouting and laughing and saw some Germans leaning over the parapet and shouting across to our men who were also leaning over the parapet. The distance was about 75 yards. One of our men shouting, 'Come on, you Fritz!' Fritz shouted back in perfect English, 'No blooming fair.' In fact, they could speak all good English. This went on for about half an hour and their heads were down when the war went back to the usual status quo. Yet another light moment came when he found a watercress growing on the stream. Went alright with bread and cheese. And another occasion he has actually observed, this war game is rather exciting, you never know what's gonna come next." Other times he recorded the smell of bacon frying in the trenches and the joys of a good sing-song sing-along. Sapper John French, while seeing the humorous light side of war, also saw the dark side of war. He was obviously awarded the Military Cross for conspicuous bravery and served at the battles of Ypres in 1917, and there he would go on to describe the horrors of moving piles of body, men killed in actions by bullets, by screams, by shrapnel and by other means, like thousands of devils on the loose. Sapper John French joined the Royal Engineers in 1915 at the age of 23, and he was sent en route to France where he saw mortars like big sausages and gas like thick yellow fog. And that's all he had to write, and that's all he wrote for now. And I consider him the Banter Man because he's the only man to actually log, well, the only famous man to log banter and exchanges between the French, the English and the Germans. So that's nice. What we're going to do now is actually list off some banter terms and some banter slang, because banter is more than just, this, well, how do I put it? Wait, hold on. I said this. Banter is more than just a slightly comment remark or a rather witty remark. It has to do with a lot of slang terms so the other person won't catch on to what you're saying as well, making it even more witty and obscure to the person, making the person actually turn his head and answering, "Oh, what are you doing?" So we're just going to go over 10 World War One slangs that we actually still use today. Well, what Britain used today. I never heard none of these before, except outside of war. Except outside the war pillboxes and stuff, but that's already ruling the list. So one is having a chat. So number one, having a chat. The expression is also ascribed to the Hindu word of the parasite, which is a chat, but it is also probably from the earlier medieval English word for idle gossip, so chattering. During the Great War, it was common to see small groups sitting around and talking as they used their fingernails or even candle lights to kill the lice. So these such groups were described as men having a chat, or stirring up a chat, or chatting. So chat was the word for lice, so basically lice patrol, lice exterminators in the trenches. Anyway, the now most universal word for a bottle of wine, in the British soldier would traditionally, how a bottle of wine would go ploink, especially the wooden cork ones. Basically, it was just the sound of the ploink from the bottle, and of course, the simplifying of foreign words when the French would use the vin blanc. So it's basically the endearment of the sound of the wine bottle and the French misinterpretations and language and stuff like that, because they were fighting in France. So that's one. That's something interesting to know. Pillbox. Well, pillbox is rather easy. It is basically, especially in 1917 going on to 1918, on the Hindenburg Line and in the fortified Flanders fields, the Germans were really being protective and actually starting to make a very defensive war. So they would start to build pillboxes or concrete fortifications. And the reason they got the word pillbox from is because they did look kind of like a caps dispenser or a dispenser for medication at the time when the war was going on. So that's interesting to know. So basically a pillbox is what it sounds like, a pillbox, because in World War One the concrete fortifications did look like pillboxes, and the construction, the configuration, the whole model for them actually came from the Boer War, which is regarded as the first semi-autonomous modern war before the Russo-Japanese War brought in a lot of the gadgets for it. But we'll discuss that later, the evolution of modern war. Anyway, number Blighty. Blighty just means home, whether it comes from the Arabic Blahadli or the Hindu word of Baliki. It just means home. Blighty. Number 5, the third light. The superstition of bad luck from lighting a cigarette 3 times from the same match or the same lighter. This is actually based upon the sound experience it took a German sniper about 5 seconds to see at night and aim at fire at a light source. So blowing up a match for the German to see clearly would often mean you'll be dead, and they were basically from 50 to 500 yards away from you, and it would take 5 seconds for the time for that bullet to leave the barrel to hit your head. So that's what it means for lighting up and the third light. So it's basically a superstition of using the third light, and the German would see you, and of course the German would kill you because he is in a 500-meter radius, and that bullet's going to take 5 seconds to get to your head. Tank is kind of self-explanatory. The story goes that it was so top secret, so new in development, that the British wanted to call them water tanks to refuel, planes, and call them NGs and stuff like that. So the word tank actually comes from the secretiveness of the tank itself. So they're actually supposed to be called land ships, and at the beginning they were called land ships, and it just became an all news thing for any motorized vehicle with armor on it. But it has to have a turret and tracks as well. But basically anything that has tracks, a turret, and basically heavily armored is considered a tank. So due to secrecy and actually trying to fool the Germans, we get the modern day word tank. Number 7, snipers. Prior to the First World War, armies had employed specialist marksmen known as sharpshooters, but when the war broke out, the Germans fielded thousands of highly trained riflemen. Usually equipped with a telescopic sight, the British officers referred to them as snipers, which had harkened back to the armies in India of the 18th century. Harkened back to the armies in India in the late 18th centuries, when officers would go for bird hunting in the hills. The tiny sniper would actually be a hard target to hit. So it's kind of like the discus, like when you're in like the fancy rich resorts, and the sling and the discus. Well, not really a fancy resort, but you'll mostly see these in upper class fancy movie scenes, where they would be flying a discus above and they would have to shoot it with a double barrel shotgun or a rifle. That is basically what it used to be called, a snip, and they just added the R to sniper, and that's how you get sniper. But it's still a fun story and interesting to really think about. But sniper also has another few implications, but the 18th century snip and the bird hunting tradition with it goes a long way to being named sniper. So number 7 is sniper. Number 8 is the most notorious word of World War One, over the top. It is an expression. Number 8, over the top. Obviously, it means to go over the top, launching an attack and climbing over the sandbags and the pipers and the parapets to the front of the trenches to get into no man's land, literally by going over the top, in thus becoming a synonymous word with World War One and highly dangerous ventures, and usually being a slim chance of survival. In most instances, you would die almost immediately, especially in the first few months of the war going over the top. But it has been rehabilitated, and basically it means very extensive and very unnecessary to go over the top. So very synonymous word with World War One, going over the top. Very hard, very slim chance of survival, very hard ventures, being unnecessary or being very extensive and extravagant. Number 9, shrapnel. This is actually a very interesting slang term because it doesn't really arrive from who gotcha or what you doing or blimey or blighty. This is actually the name of the man who created the artillery piece and the shrapnel that comes with it, Sir Lieutenant Henry Shrapnel of the Royal Artillery in 1784. So basically what shrapnel is, if you don't know what it is basically like if a grenade or artillery piece goes off, especially since in World War One artillery pieces would actually go halfway off and create shrapnel shells. It's basically the shell disembarking and going in many different directions, so it's basically a shotgun shell in a sense, where that the shell would actually explode and splinter into many different areas and different parts, and the huge metal, hot metal and very fast metal will kill or injure you very quickly. So that's interesting to know. That's very interesting. You learn something new every day. Even I learn something, that shrapnel is not a slang term, but actually derived from the actual man who created the artillery piece in 1784. And finally, number 10, Boomph. It is derived from the army term boom fodder, paper that only has one possible practical use. It was originally a pre-war schoolboy slang then appropriated by the soldiers to refer to an extensive noose of paperwork. It is generally referred to by the endless streams of army orders and the issuing of headquarters and other such things like that, so the papermen of the headquarters. In the middle of one practically savage attack on the Somme, a British orderly officer received a series of communications from HQ demanding to know how much tin jams was held in store and how much pairs of socks were required. Some things never change. And that's it. That's all we have today. Number 10, Boomph. Number 9, shrapnel. Number 8, going over the top. Number 7, sniper. Number 6, tank. Number 5, turd light. Number 4, blimey or blighty. Number 3, pillbox. Number 2, plonk. And number 1, having a chat. And that's it. Slang and the various use of slang in World War One. I would not really touch on cursing right now, because you know, we are here in the holiest of holiest bedrooms. But anyway, I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed. And gonna be like one of those Christian YouTube channels for a minute. They're really trying to take away our freedoms every day. Like not even a joke. Like even atheists can see this. Like they're trying to take away our freedoms every day. I read in a BBC article the other day that banter, the use of witty, snark comments and remarks to insult someone or even just have a laugh, or you know, like especially like when you're in the classroom with a teacher that you hate, I know you're just gossiping with friends and stuff, that's now considered like hate speech in a sense, that you can actually say whatever you want as a slimy remark and say, you know, it's just banter. And there have been some real actual evidence of this being happening, but very on a small scale, and even then it's still kind of banter, because honestly banter is supposed to be fun, silly, and you can't have hate speech if everything is free speech. If you don't agree with it, that is your right to not agree with it and be offended by it, but I still have the right to say what I want and what I like. So every day they're trying to take away our freedoms, they're trying to take away our banter. Sapper John French was on the right idea of losing that diary to actually get banter from World War One, pure unadulterated banter from World War One. He did see horrors of war, but Sometimes there's a lol in the trenches, there's a LOL in the trenches, and that's something we don't really see within World War One. Even in my series, it's kind of dark and drab sometimes, except for this episode. But yeah, it's always dark and drab, and the only thing you really get is the Christmas truce, and that's like something exalted, like something like not even funny, like just like humans being humans for one day, and it really does bring a tear to your eye. But honestly, you just want some lols in the trenches, some everyday man stuff, not this one exalted higher than high days. Like just having a fun day on the lol on the sun before 1916, or having a fall, or having a low day on the you know, Chemin de Dam front before 1917. Yeah, man, war is hell, but there's always something to take home from war, whether it be a laugh, a tear, a cry, a dead man, a live man, a man missing a limb, or even just a buddy to take home in memory of, rather remembrance, or even seeing them on the weekend and grabbing a beer or a drink, cranberry on the rocks, please. You know, you gotta have some good times. And even though this whole video was kind of about free speech, we can't forget the people who have actually died and fought for the right to say what you want to say and be offended by what you want to be offended. So as far as back as Crimea, the Boer Wars, the two Boer Wars, the Russo-Japanese War, World War One, World War Two, Vietnam, the Gulf War, and Operation Iraq, Operation Freedom. I don't know. Iraq is a very controversial war, and but they do still protect us. Even to this day, they still protect the freedoms and rights of every citizen of the world to say what you want, do what you want, be what you want in the Western world, mostly in the top hemisphere, because trust me, you can't be certain things down here. Yes, I mean like gay and stuff like that, you know, LGBTQ or queer, or you know, non-binary, or whatever you like to go by. Can't really do that here, but you still have the freedom not to be instantly have your head chopped off in the Islamic world. So at least you have that. You get name call and you have the freedom of speech, but you have the freedom to ignore people like that. So yeah, it's a real powerful thing. We take things for granted because we live in first world. Well, I live in a third world country, but you know, I'm not I'm not an African country, but pretty third world country. But even still, those third world countries still strive and try to keep, you know, a positive vibe and try not to be so down in the dumps. They really do show like Nigeria and Zaire people, the Congos, African countries that have really been through a lot of war and stuff, but they neglect to show South Africa. Well, South Africa is a shithole. Like no joke, South Africa is going to be a failed state in 10 years, give or take. I'm sorry. If you don't turn around and stop killing the Boers and stop killing the Zulus, you're going to be in trouble, South Africa. You're going to be in trouble. Utter trouble. Anyway, this is not a video to rip on African countries or say that the first world countries are the best. This is a video about the men who fought and died for free speech. The free speech rights that we have, even though we don't have the First Amendment in a lot of countries. Well, America only has the First Amendment. We still have the basic human right to say and do what we want to do, and that should not be taken away from us. And UNICEF and the UN should protect those rights and unban banter from schools. Anyway, that's just me, you know. If banter is ban tomorrow, this is the final hoorah for banter. If Pargy is Porgy, yeah, he's I can't remember his name. Porgy, yeah. He is like a BBC character from Simon Look or something. I can't remember his name, but his real name is Simon, and he does like this BBC Radio 1 show, or no, Radio 3 show, where he's basically Porgy, and he basically, hold on. He basically has a talk show and he talks a lot of nonsense. Really good banter, really is. And that's where the meme comes from. Sorry, I'm gonna try and link. I'm gonna try and even do it in the video. Why not? Anyway, I hope you learned something. I hope you really think about the sacrifices people have done to keep your free speech intact, and I really hope you don't just take it for granted the next time someone says to trade in your free speech for bread, because that's what they want you to do at the end of the day. Security for your rights for security. And when you start trading in your rights for security, and banter's not even a big thing, but sorry, I was gonna end, but banter's not even a big thing, but it's like we start with banter, then we say no Islamophobia, then no homophobia, then no Christian talk, then no talking about the government. Sorry, I'm still kind of sick. Then no talking about the government, and then no talking about the administration, and then no talking about the European Union, and then it spirals out of control until you basically are watching cat videos and can't access certain parts of the internet. So that's what really I'm trying to say is that today is banter, tomorrow it's just you watching cat videos, can't say nothing, can't criticize the government, can't criticize other people, can't criticize corporations, can't criticize this, can't criticize that. So today it starts with but, and then tomorrow the whole dictionary has been burnt and thrown out. That's what I'm trying to say. One day you can't say but, B-U-T-T, and then the next day the whole dictionary is thrown out. So anyway, and I'm not gonna like exacerbate this and say they're gonna take away all the rights one day, but they do it slowly but surely, and really try to dig in deep and try to take away these minuscule things first, and then really take on the bigger boys like actually free speech. But anyway, I hope you enjoy something. I hope you learn. I hope you really think about free speech in a different light. And you know what? If they do ban banter, this is the final hurrah, and they'll never take this video down. Wait, hold on. They'll never take this video down. God bless Britannia. God rule the waves. God bless the whole world. And yeah, I say what I want to say. So yeah, just like this video, free speech, all that shit. Anyway, I'm gonna get 2 hot dogs. I'm gonna eat 2 hot dogs. I'm gonna take a bath. I'm gonna have some banter, and gonna tell all these Overwatch people that they suck and can't play the game, because that's my right to say what I want to say on the internet. Anyway, have a good night, and your banter's shit, and you can't even compare to my banter. So enjoy. Have a good night or a good day, and I should really find an outro or something. But my banter is better than yours, so I don't care. Anyway, hope you learned something. Enjoy.